All right, so today we're diving into the controversy swirling around New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani. It's a story that really blew up after a commentator on a Sky News Australia segment used one single, very powerful label. And this is where it all started, with this really blunt statement from commentator Bill Maher. Now, this one quote didn't just add to the conversation, it totally reset the terms of the debate. So let's get some context on how we even got to this point. Okay, so first up, let's break down that accusation. I mean, this wasn't just some offhand comment. It was a very deliberate, very provocative label, and it was dropped in a super public forum. You see, before Maher jumped in, the panel was already trying to figure out where exactly to place Mayor Mamdani on the political map. They were throwing around terms like socialist and democratic socialist. Maher's move was to just slice right through all of that with a term that carries a whole lot more weight. But here's the thing, Maher didn't just throw that accusation out there with nothing to back it up. He pointed to something specific as his justification, a statement from one of the mayor's own key advisors. He basically framed it as the proof, the smoking gun, that there was a much more radical agenda hiding just under the surface. And this one comment, it becomes absolutely central to the entire argument. So naturally, the focus then pivots away from the mayor himself and on to the people he appointed. The Sky News segment that we're looking at really zooms in on these specific and, you have to say, highly controversial statements made by his team. The first one they highlight is from Mamdani's chief equity officer, and it suggests this fundamental change in how we think about property. It says that white families would have a different relationship to property, something closer to a communal model. As you can imagine, that language immediately became a huge flashpoint. And it didn't stop there. That same appointee went even further, calling the entire concept of private home ownership a weapon of white supremacy. I mean, that is an incredibly provocative claim that goes right at the heart of how many people think about building wealth in America. And that brings us full circle, right back to the spark that lit the fuse. The final piece of evidence the segment points to is this tweet from the mayor's tenant advocate, the exact statement that Bill Maher used as his justification for dropping the communist label in the first place. So, with all these statements now out in the open, the reaction from the other commentators on that Sky News segment was, well, let's just say it was intense. Let's break down exactly what they had to say. And the criticisms really came from all angles. The ideas were called economically absurd, a sign that the public school system is failing, but a really key argument they made was about a perceived double standard. The thinking was, if you just reversed the racial language in those statements, the public outcry would be absolutely deafening, and that line of thought led them to their final, much bigger argument. Right, so one of the commentators basically laid out this theory, that some of today's anti-racist activism isn't really about achieving equality for all. Instead, it's about flipping a power dynamic. The goal, according to this theory, is for their side should be on top. It's a pretty controversial take, but it's central to how the critics in the segment were explaining the motivation behind those comments. But, and this is a really big but, that fierce, fiery criticism we just heard about in the Sky News segment, that's not the whole story. Not even close. To really get the full picture, you have to see how Mayor Mamdani was received in a totally different setting. So right after this whole firestorm erupts, Mayor Mamdani appears on the daytime talk show The View, and the Sky News commentators, they described his interview as a total love fest, a pretty stark contrast to their own Takedown, right? Now, they didn't just give him a free pass. He was asked, point blank, about those controversial posts from his team. So this was his chance. He was on the spot and had to respond to the very heart of the criticism being leveled against him. And that was his answer. Instead of defending the statements or condemning them or even explaining them, he just redirected the whole thing. He basically said, my words are the only ones that matter for my views. Well, the critics were looking at, they immediately called that a slippery non-answer. And this moment right here just perfectly illustrates the huge media divide. On one side, you've got the critics, laser-focused on the fact that he didn't condemn what his people said. And on the other side, you have Whoopi Goldberg on The View praising him, saying, you make sense, and even suggesting he could help remake the nation. It's like they were watching two completely different interviews, describing two completely different realities. So all of this leaves us with one final big question. I mean, think about it.
From communist to racist to a leader who could remake the nation, this entire thing has just been a whirlwind of really powerful labels. And it makes you wonder, when the whole conversation becomes a battle of labels, what important details, what actual policies, what nuances are getting completely lost in the crossfire?